For years, I devoted myself to serving as the wife of the Marquis of Wei in place of my elder cousin. I was universally praised as a worthy marquise, deserving of every honor. Everyone envied my good fortune. Until the Marquis of Wei, to marry my cousin, forced me to take poison and end my life. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn to the night before I was forced into the substitute marriage. I knocked on the door of that celestial cousin of the Xia family, holding back tears as I said, "I don't want to marry." He opened the door, robes draped over his shoulders, and gazed at my desperate state. His voice was cool and steady, "Then you won't marry." That single promise became his vow to shield me from every storm and trial that followed. Main text: the third month of captivity by enemy forces. I received news of the Wei Marquis' marriage to my cousin, Shuiyin of Jinling. Their wedding was common knowledge. In turbulent times, alliances between noble houses were nothing unusual. That was, of course, before Wei Sun had a marquis' wife, one captured by the enemy for helping him evacuate civilians. The enemy commander had long offered 3 cities in exchange for my release. Wei Sun delayed his response. Only today did he dispatch an envoy bearing 2 items. One was a message for the commander, mocking him for attempting to manipulate a prince with a mere woman. He would never cede 3 cities for my sake. The other was for me, a packet of arsenic for suicide. The envoy conveyed Wei Sun's message. He said, "Ah Yun, I have wronged you. I shall repay you in the next life." Those were his only words. Trapped by enemy forces for months, I endured daily torture, suspended between life and death. I waited and waited, until my lord took another wife, until he sent me arsenic, hoping I would end my own life. He told me he would make amends in the next life. 3 months ago, I was still the most envied woman in Wei's capital, the Lady of Wei. Born not to a distinguished lineage, but merely a minor branch of the Shui clan of Jinling, I had the extraordinary fortune to marry the young and powerful Wei Sun in place of my elder cousin. Youthful ambition, golden spears and iron horses. From then on, I basked in unparalleled glory before others. No one knew the torment I endured behind closed doors. Because of the substitution marriage, Wei Sun never acknowledged me as his wife, never once looked at me properly. Without his support, and with my humble origins, I found every step in Wei capital an arduous struggle. I personally tilled the fields during spring planting to demonstrate a woman's virtue. I served my mother-in-law with unwavering devotion for years, never faltering. Knowing Wei Sun's ambitions for the realm, I strove to be the perfect marquise, earning praise throughout Wei's capital. I believed that if I tried hard enough, I could succeed. But I was wrong. At least, Wei Sun didn't think so. When chaos erupted in Yecheng, he left me behind to bolster the morale of his troops. Even though he knew the enemy forces would reach the city soon, even though he knew I was just a woman. As Wei Sun was about to depart, I called out to him, my hand trembling fearfully beneath my sleeve. I asked, "My lord, will you come for me?" Wei Shuin turned, his sword clinking against his armor. He said he would. He lied to me. Not until the city fell, not until I was detained by enemy forces for 3 months while evacuating civilians, did he come. From the very beginning. He never intended to come for me. For no matter how capable I became, I was never the woman he desired. I never imagined that after being poisoned with arsenic, I would return to the night before my arranged marriage to Wei Sun. Still clad in my wedding gown, I was only 16 that year. The Shui family stood guard beside me, threatening me with a mix of coercion and persuasion. He is the Marquis of Wei. Marrying him means unimaginable wealth and honor. If you delay, not only your life, but your parents' lives will be forfeit. The Shui clan of Jinling was a distinguished and prestigious family. My family, however, was merely a distant branch, a minor offshoot that had split off at some unknown point. We were a small household, yet one day, the main family came knocking. They said their eldest daughter had lost her playmate. My mother, troubled by my marriage prospects, hoped I might seize this chance to find a suitable husband in Jinling. The match seemed perfect. Before my departure, she was both joyful and anxious, saying one moment, "Jinling is vast and full of talented men. There are many fine young men there. It would be good for you to see for yourself." Then, in the next breath, "Ayun, if the people of Jinling treat you badly, just come back. I will always be here." She didn't know. None of us knew. I could never return. Because the Shui family hadn't come seeking a playmate for Shuiyin at all, they'd come seeking a substitute bride. The moment I arrived in Jinling, I was forced into a wedding gown. The Shui family kept watch day and night, terrified I might flee. From that day on, I had no choice in my life. I had nowhere to go. But perhaps one path remained. When the old woman guarding me wasn't looking, I knocked her unconscious with a porcelain pillow and climbed out the window. If my memory serves, Xiaolin, the man who later bore the seals of 6 states chancellors, was staying at the Shui residence at that time. A gentleman's integrity is nothing more than this. I didn't know where he resided. Only that he favored dwelling near water. I ran desperately toward the emerald lake of the Shui residence, drenched in sweat. Wei Sun had repeatedly sought to punish me for my role as a substitute bride. Had Xiaolin not intervened, I would have faced certain doom. If I could find Xiaolin, perhaps he could help me. Lights began flickering on throughout the Shui residence. Guards and maidservants mobilized in search, their footsteps drawing ever closer. Someone shouted, "There!" I crashed into a lakeside cottage and slammed against a tightly shut door. A steward had already gathered men outside the cottage, hesitating as if wary to enter. The next instant, the door swung open from within. Xiaolin, robed and rising, stood before me. Exhaustion left me speechless. Only a few choked words escaped. "I don't want to marry. Can you help me?" My wedding gown was torn from running, my face streaked with sweat. The Shui family said marrying the Wei Marquis would bring unimaginable wealth. No one mentioned I'd endure a decade of coldness, discrimination, and harsh criticism, never finding peace. The steward outside called out, "Young Master Xia, the bride who fled in the dead of night has disturbed you. We'll take her away now." He ignored the call, his gaze fixed on me. Xiaolin spoke, as if to me, yet also to those behind him. Moonlight fell upon his face. He said, "Then I won't marry." At the end of my rope, one promise. From then on, through fire and brimstone, he stood by me, never breaking his word. Xiaolin sent a personal letter to the old patriarch of the Shui family, then had a maid take me to bathe and change. When I emerged, he was brewing tea on the veranda. The courtyard stood wide open. Floor-length white gauze curtains rustled in the night breeze, while wooden clogs echoed softly along the wooden walkway. I sat down carefully across from Xiaolin. The surroundings were still as water, as if the half-hour's earlier chaos had never happened. Only the dull ache from the scrapes on my body, sustained during my escape, reminded me this was no dream. It was already the 3rd watch of the night. By dawn, the Shui family would be sending off their bride. Yet in the distance, wedding lanterns glowed, and servants still bustled about preparing the banquet. The Shui family still intended to marry off their daughter. I gripped the hem of my skirt beside me, my voice tight as I asked, "Who is getting married?" A wave of panic surged instinctively through me. I feared the Shui family would come for me again before dawn. I feared Xiaolin's promise might be broken at the last moment. He pushed the brewed tea toward me. This was a calming tea. Xiaolin tilted his head, his reply light and matter-of-fact, "Shuiyun. The one who was meant to marry the Wei Marquis." I froze. It was meant to be this way. The one betrothed to the Wei Marquis was my cousin, Shuiyun. Yet she despised the Wei capital's bleak, frigid climate and refused to marry. Such a simple reason had shattered my entire life. On the night of my substitution, the Wei Marquis drew his sword and pierced my veil. The blade nearly severed my throat as he declared, enunciating each word, "You are not the wife I intended to marry." For the 10 years of that marriage, I knew not a single day of peace. Xiaolin had set everything back on its original course. This time, Shuiyun herself would marry the Marquis of Wei. The 10 years of Wei's capital's coldness, I would not have to endure them again. I looked into Xiaolin's eyes, and in that instant, tears threatened to spill. I quickly lowered my head, pretending to sip my tea to hide them. Xiaolin said, "Finish this cup of tea, then sleep. I'll take you home." In the deep night, heavy with dew, I returned to the day my fate plunged into the abyss. Someone said he would take me home. I changed into the clothes I wore when I left home, hand-sewn by my mother. The silks and brocades of Jinling, even those of Wei's capital, never suited me. Even as I climbed into the carriage, I leaned out the window, my eyes bright, asking Xiaolin, cousin, are we going back to Miaoshan? The Shui and Xie families were distantly related. To maintain the connection, I had to call him cousin. Even the accompanying servants seemed on the verge of sighing. Xiaolin lifted his eyes, answering me for what felt like the 100th time, a hint of resignation in his voice. Yes. We are going back to Miaoshan. Returning to my hometown, Miaoshan. Going home. I lowered the curtain, unable to contain my joyful excitement. In my past life, I married Wei Ho in place of Shui Yun, journeying thousands of miles away. I always thought I'd return home someday, but I never did. Not even before I died. After 2 days of travel, the carriage stopped beside the Dan River. Miao County lay just across the river. But fate intervened, and we encountered the Shui family's wedding procession. Shui Yun was also crossing the Dan River to marry in the Wei capital. She had departed before us but was delayed here by a broken boat. Our paths crossed, and she could share our vessel. Shui Yun was the last to board. Standing on the deck, I could only see her carefully surrounded by attendants. Yet she suddenly flung back her veil and looked up at Xiaolin. This was my first time seeing Shui Yun face to face. I knew she was the Shui family's most cherished daughter, Jinling's most coveted maiden, the woman Wei Sun couldn't forget for 10 years. I had been poisoned to death because of her, yet I had never seen her. Shui Yun, like a wind-blown lotus, her eyes brimming with tears, said to Xiaolin, cousin. I don't want to marry Wei Sun. The north is so cold, and besides, Wei Sun has a reputation for killing his father and brother. Who knows if he might even kill his own wife? Can you help me? Xiaolin remained silent. His servant replied on his behalf, cousin, the Shui and Wei families are bound by marriage. Moreover, you are already betrothed and will soon arrive in Wei territory. Even my master cannot intervene. Shui Yun spoke softly, there is a way. Her gaze flickered toward me. Even now, she refused to look at me directly. I realized she had guessed who I was. The distant cousin deceived into the Shui household, originally intended to marry in her stead. Shui Yun continued, the woman by your side came to Jinling seeking a favorable marriage. Alas, her lowly status made her undesirable to Jinling's fine young men. If she were to marry the Wei Marquis in my place, it would actually be her climbing the social ladder, a solution that benefits both parties. Her words trailed off. Xiaolin offered a cold, dismissive smile and uttered just 3 words, get out. Shui Yun's eyes widened in disbelief. She never imagined hearing those 3 words from her cousin, who seemed like an immortal among mortals. Xiaolin continued, you shun this marriage, yet expect others to suffer in your place. The Shui family, with its generations of nobility, has produced such a foolish and wicked woman. Get out. You're a stain on my vision. His tone was casual, yet every word dripped with contempt. Someone in the crowd snorted derisively. Shui Yun staggered backward, nearly falling. Xiaolin, the crown prince of Jinling, had just branded her foolish and wicked, a single sentence enough to destroy her reputation and honor. I watched her tearfully flailing form in silence. Then it suddenly dawned on me. So this was the kind of wife Wei Sun desired. Sails unfurled as the river surged onward. Upon boarding, I first inspected every sailor and crew member, then summoned the maidservants to arrange the quarters and oversee the provisions. I borrowed the ship's galley, intending to prepare a bowl of crab-roe dumplings for Xiaolin as a token of gratitude. The young maid assisting me, a native of the boat, stared wide-eyed and asked, Lady, though a substitute marriage sounds rather unpleasant, it's still the Marquis of Wei. If I could marry even a minor official, I'd be utterly content. She was still young, unaware of many things. In my past life, all of Wei City envied me. Though my birth was humble, I married the Marquis of Wei, a man who showed little interest in women, a young prodigy. Countless times, as I gazed at his retreating figure, I'd ask myself, Shui Yun, what more could you possibly want? It wasn't until I was trapped by enemy forces and received the arsenic he sent that I finally understood. This was not the life I desired. This was not the life I deserved. I strived relentlessly, yet despair often overwhelmed me. The little maid saw me lost in thought for a long time. She waved her hand in front of my eyes and yawned, Lady, if you don't want to marry the Marquis of Wei, what kind of man do you want to marry? The crab roe cakes were already steamed. I carefully arranged them on a plate. The little maid thought she wouldn't get an answer from me. Amidst the mist rising from the steamer, I lowered my eyes. I said, I want to marry a very good man. Not a warlord in turbulent times, nor one who wields supreme power. Wealth and glory are not what I seek. As long as he treats me well, and we can support each other through life, that is enough. Xiaolin was setting up a chessboard on the deck, idly tapping the pieces. Before him lay an unsolved puzzle. I extended my fingertip and placed a piece for him. In an instant, the ice melted, the snow dissolved, and the puzzle was solved. Xiaolin looked up at me, his eyes filled with astonishment and admiration. I placed a bowl of crab roe cake before him. I could offer Xiaolin no other help now, only this bowl of cake to express my feelings. In my past life, he had also tasted my crab roe cake. Back then, the Marquis of Wei, seeking to win Xiaolin's favor, knew he longed for the cuisine and pastries of the southern lands. He ordered me, the Marquis's wife who also hailed from the south, to prepare crab roe cake and send it to him as a token of esteem and favor. He had liked it very much at the time. But he ate only one piece, refusing to touch the rest. For he had seen the wounds on my hands from peeling crabs, and noticed the anxiety in my eyes. After a long pause, he said, to burden others for my own culinary desires is not my wish. Lady consort, I apologize. He was the first person in the Wei capital to ever apologize to me. After my rebirth, Xiaolin has done me such immense favors. I still owe him so much, and all I can offer now is a bowl of pastries to express my gratitude. Besides, the young maid assisting on board was quite nimble, so my hands remained unharmed this time. I was watching Xiaolin eat the pastry with his eyes lowered. Then I heard him say, "Don't take what Shuiyin said to heart." I paused, then recalled what Shuiyin had said, that I was of lowly birth, that I was climbing through marriage, that no young man in Jinling would look at me. Truthfully, she wasn't wrong. On the day I arrived in Jinling, the Shui household held a banquet. As a newcomer, I made a tremendous blunder and nearly got thrown out. But Xiaolin lifted his eyes to meet mine and said earnestly, "The people of Jinling are pedantic and arrogant. Miss Ayun, it is Jinling that is unworthy of you. It's not that you're inadequate. It's that you're too good." A wave of bitterness surged through me as I rose to gaze at the river. The Dan River stretched vast beneath the afternoon sun. Clouds and sunset hues mirrored in its depths. A river breeze brushed my face, revealing a faint dark streak in the distance. Upon closer look, I realized it was a line of ships. At first glance, I mistook them for merchant vessels. Xiaolin abruptly stood, raised the Xia family banner. The guards accompanying Xiaolin were no ordinary men, reacting swiftly. Only the ship's owner stumbled backward, landing on the deck, his face ashen. "We've encountered river pirates." The guard snapped, "Our young master is here. What are you afraid of?" The Dan River was ruled by ruthless pirate overlords who slaughtered without mercy. Official campaigns to subdue them had repeatedly failed. In my past life, when I crossed the river as a substitute bride, I also encountered pirates, though fortunately it ended without incident. While everyone around was busy, I spoke softly, "They're not pirates." Xiaolin turned to look at me. I pointed toward the approaching large vessel. "It's the Wei Marquis' fleet. Blackwood hull, black sails. When it draws nearer, you'll see the black bird emblem on the bow." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. After all, no one wanted to encounter river pirates. Only Xiaolin suddenly reached out, resting his hand on my shoulder. Only then did I realize I had been trembling all over. Xiaolin said, "Shuiyun, I'm here." He knew nothing of my past, only that I trembled with fear whenever I mentioned the Wei Marquis. That single sentence was enough. I wouldn't be a substitute bride for the Wei Marquis. I wouldn't be poisoned to death. I would have a very, very good life. Xiaolin ordered a change of course to evade them, but a swift dagger-shaped boat blocked our path. From the second-deck cabin, I looked down and saw attendants on the dagger boat step aside as a figure stepped onto the bow. Clothed in black with crimson patterns, bearing the bearing of a dragon and the grace of a phoenix, his eyes and brows like sudden stars in a cold night. The Wei Marquis, Wei Sun. The future warlord who would dominate the chaotic age, hailed by all as your lordship. I didn't know why he appeared on the Dan River now. This had never happened in my past life. My heart hung by a thread. Yet Wei Sun merely called out across the river, "Sir, have you come from Jinling across the way? Has the Shui family's wedding procession crossed the river yet?" He spoke with casual indifference. I should have come to meet her sooner, but I took the opportunity to clear out some river pirates along the way, which delayed me slightly. I froze. Only then did I notice the blood splattered on the sharp-bladed hull. Behind the Wei Marquis, the vast fleet of boats was adorned with red wedding branches. The capital of Wei lay thousands of miles away. Who could have imagined the Wei Marquis would personally escort the bride? To ensure the bride's safe passage, he had eradicated every pirate along the river. Xia Lin replied, "The Shui family's daughter has not yet crossed the river." Receiving this answer, Wei Sun exhaled in relief, adding with self-deprecating humor, "That's good. My future wife has a fiery temper. I feared she might be angry with me if I didn't come to fetch her." Though clearly complaining, the corners of his mouth curved upward. Just as Wei Sun was about to order the dagger boat to depart, he turned and caught sight of the leftover crab meat pastries on the small deck table. Just then, a fierce wind surged, churning the river into waves. Wei Sun froze abruptly, his breath catching in his throat. Slowly, deliberately, he enunciated each word. "Who made these pastries?" Xia Lin offered no reply, only a cool, clear voice. "Famous delicacies of Jiangnan, anyone can make them." Many could craft such pastries, yet Wei Sun knew only one person who loved to shape crab roe pastries into the form of open crabs. Whenever that name surfaced in his mind, a bitter, stinging regret, almost unbearable, would instantly overwhelm him. The sword at Wei Ho's waist drew an inch from its scabbard, its blade still bearing the bloodstains of recent combat. His voice was icy as he commanded, "Search the ship." An advisor cautioned him, "Your lordship, it is the Xia family's vessel." Only then did Xia Lin rise to his feet, taking a few steps forward. The crew of the dagger-shaped boat could now see his full figure. Xia Lin, the most brilliant scholar under heaven, was known to every noble and prince. Even the Wei Marquis could not forcibly search his vessel. As the standoff lingered, Xia Lin suddenly smiled. A young maid came to clear the table, grumbling, "I made this. I spent the whole afternoon peeling crabs. Would you like to come to the kitchen and see how I did it, sir?" She muttered under her breath, "A plate of smiling crab roe pastries and you're already brandishing swords and guns. You Wei people are truly peculiar." No wonder Miss Shui cried and cried when she married off. She even tried to stop our young master at the dock from leaving. Thank goodness the ship broke down. Wei Sun's expression darkened instantly. In this vast world, countless pastries share similar shapes. He knew he was overreacting, yet he refused to tolerate even the slightest flaw. What troubled him was the young maid's latter remark. The Shui family maiden wept. Wei Sun lowered his gaze, pain piercing his heart. She didn't want to marry, but it didn't matter. Nothing had truly happened yet. There was still time. Time to treat her well, time to love her, time to give her a lifetime of carefree days. Xia Lin had silently observed his expression for a long while before speaking calmly, "Lord Wei, dusk has fallen, the perfect hour for the wedding procession. Delay any longer, and we shall miss it." Lord Wei gave a gesture. The dagger-shaped boat immediately turned, slicing through the waves like a blade. Before departing, Wei Ho lifted his head as if sensing something, gazing toward the second-deck cabin. But beyond the curtains fluttering in the wind, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Empty and void. He had missed his chance. It wasn't only I who had been reborn, Wei Ho had too. 1,000-mile dash, intercepting the ship to ask for rice cakes, there was no explanation for it other than his memories from a past life. The path ahead was as uncertain as the undulating crimson waters. I didn't know what Wei Sun intended to do with the second chance. But I wanted to avoid him. As the boat neared the shore, Miaoshan County came into view. Stepping off the deck, I suddenly lifted my skirt and glanced back, tears mingling with a smile. The river wind blew fiercely. Xia Lin held a lantern, lighting my path. "Cousin Xia, do you know? You've helped me more than once." Xia Lin froze. In my past life, during the 6th year of my marriage to the Wei Marquis, I caught a chill while accompanying him on flood relief missions years earlier. After years of barrenness, the clan elders urged the Marquis to take a concubine, a princess of the Han dynasty. At that time, the Marquis was preoccupied with campaigns across the land. As I packed his belongings and fastened the chin strap of his crown before his departure, he instructed me, "The princess holds noble status, she may sometimes act excessively. Bear with her." He lowered his head, brushing my eyelid with his lips. "Yun, I'll bring you the first lotus blossoms of Jiangnan when I return." I watched his striding figure disappear into the distance. I watched him depart like this many times, yet he never once looked back. Wei Sun, Wei Du, and every person in Jinling were the same, none ever regarded my origins with respect. The princess refused to be a concubine. She brought her private army to Wei capital, determined to become the lady of the Marquis of Wei. Each spring plowing season, I would personally work the fields alongside common farm women, encouraging agricultural labor throughout Wei. The princess set fire to the plowed fields. Amid the chaos, she abducted me and tossed me like a pig or a dog into the foul water pond outside the city. As I was drowning, Xia Lin, the then chancellor, saved me. I clutched his hand, my mind reeling from the burns. Even my tears burned hot. "I don't want to be here." He asked, "Then where do you wish to go?" I pressed my lips together, unable to speak. "Anywhere but the Wei capital." But I couldn't leave. My parents were in the hands of the Shui family. I had been in Wei territory for 6 years, the Wei Marquis would never permit my departure. Later, the Wei Marquis heard the news and returned to the city, his fury shaking the court and the realm. He assigned me a private guard, and the princess died suddenly the next day. The Wei Marquis promised me he would not take a concubine for at least 3 years. Women across Wei envied me for this honor. Only I knew the truth. The Wei Marquis had never desired women, but he would one day take a new wife or concubine of noble birth. Sooner or later, I would meet a bitter end. Never had I realized this with such profound sorrow. My husband was a mighty ruler in turbulent times, yet he had never shown me a shred of compassion. Chancellor Xia, however, suffered repercussions because of me. He lived a life of unblemished integrity, never taking a wife or concubine. Clad in pure white robes, he bore the seals of 6 states' chancellors. Rumors circulated that he remained in the Wei capital solely because of his affection for the Marquis of Wei's wife. Wei Sun heard this and grew displeased, forbidding me from seeing him again. Until one day, we met by chance in the palace corridor. I lifted the curtain and apologized. "These rumors are utterly absurd. Minister Xia, please do not give them a thought." He asked me only one question. He said, "Then where would you like to go?" It was the same question he had asked when he saved me that day. "If not the Wei capital, where would you wish to be?" Xia Lin raised his eyes, like the bright moon in the heavens. He smiled faintly. "What if? It's not as the rumors say? What if his reason for staying in Wei capital wasn't what they claimed?" Mingmiao County lay within sight, yet I hesitated to go. Wei Sun was coming with fierce intent. If he truly sought me, Mingmiao County wouldn't be hard to find. The best course was to remain by Xia Lin's side. But those words were too difficult to utter. Across 2 lifetimes, I owe Xia Lin far too much. His life has been smooth sailing, while I, so frail and weak, know not when I might ever repay his kindness. The river rocked the boat, night lamp swayed. I could not burden Xia Lin any longer. I had already prepared to disembark, to part ways here. "Cousin Xia, thank you. Today, Yun is alone and powerless, unable to repay your kindness. But in the days to come, I shall surely repay your kindness." Xia Lin lowered his gaze, seeing only the flickering lantern light reflected in my eyes. Suddenly, he spoke, "There is an opportunity to repay that debt." I froze. Xia Lin continued, "I must journey to Wuzhou. None of my companions possess your meticulousness or breadth of knowledge. Ayun, would you accompany me a little further?" He had always been perceptive. He couldn't have failed to notice my panic, and likely guessed my past with the Wei Marquis. Yet he never asked why. We were complete strangers. Yet because of my conflict with the Shui family and my clash with the Wei Marquis. Even now, offering his aid, he used such gentle words. I held back tears. Xia Lin, if I were a truly wicked woman, what would you do? Xia Lin murmured a denial. You wouldn't be. He wouldn't say it, but he'd been dreaming all along, a dream from which he awoke with no recollection. He only knew a woman sat behind a curtain. Minister Xia, I cannot leave. The impoverished women and children of Wei need my care. No one else in court will speak for them. The Marquis of Wei is warlike. I can curb his bloodlust and reduce the wars. Your honor is unblemished. You need not be entangled with me, lest future historians misinterpret our connection. My freedom matters little. If one day you return to Jiangnan, remember to send my parents word that I am safe. That alone would suffice. These words were spoken by another. Her beauty rivaled spring mountains, her heart as pure as water. She was kinder and more resilient than anyone in the world. Yet she was not happy. Chancellor Xia had lived a life of smooth sailing. With only one regret. He had met her too late, unable to take her away. She was a truly wonderful girl. Yet she never had a truly wonderful life. Wuzhou was suffering from severe flooding. Xia Lin, who understood the heavens and the earth, had been invited by the governor of Wuzhou to rebuild the river channels and alleviate the flood damage. Day after day, clad in a straw raincoat, he left early and returned late. I thought Xia Lin's request for my help was mere courtesy, but he genuinely introduced me to the governor for the work. In my past life in the Wei capital, whenever natural disasters or calamities struck, I managed the Wei Marquis' funds and provisions, comforting the victims, meticulous and flawless. The logistics of Wuzhou's flood relief were no extraordinary challenge for me. I personally oversaw every step, contacting wealthy merchants, erecting shelters for the displaced, opening granaries to distribute forage. Within days, the once barren land turned lush and green. What began as repaying Xia Lin's kindness gradually blossomed into a sense of fulfillment. Everyone here calls me Miss Yun Yun. Miss Yun Yun, yesterday my child caught a cold and ran a high fever. Thank goodness you summoned Dr. Liu. Miss Yun Yun, you're unlike those noble ladies and young misses. You're the kindest person I've ever met. Miss Ayun, thanks to you, no one dares to skim off the grain. Miss Ayun, thank you so much. Truthfully, in the Wei capital, such praise wasn't unheard of. The Marquis of Wei has a virtuous wife, gifted in both virtue and talent. But each and every one of them called me the Marquis' lady. Everyone knew me as Lady Wei Shui, none knew my true name, Ayun. Everything I did was merely to lay bricks and tiles for the Wei Marquis' empire. The drizzling rain showed no sign of stopping. On my way to distribute the porridge, I rescued a child clinging to a piece of driftwood in the floodwaters. Covered in mud beneath my straw cloak, I couldn't handle the food with my hands and had to entrust the distribution to others. Leaning against a pillar, I fell asleep, overcome by exhaustion. In my dream, I saw the scene of my death in a past life. 1,000 miles of Wei wore mourning white, 4 months, funeral music played. In the royal city, every face wore sorrow. The court historian wept as he wrote my biography for the Annals of Queens. The Marquis of Wei renounced his betrothal, refusing further alliances with powerful clans. His wife remained but one, from beginning to end. The people who had received my kindness spontaneously built my tomb. Before the tomb, the Wei Marquis slaughtered his long-serving warhorse, declaring, 6 divine steeds shall escort her soul to the void. Without sleep or rest, he personally carved the steel. On its completion, he vomited blood and collapsed unconscious. The steel recorded my life's deeds and bore my name. Only then did the world learn the Wei Marquis' wife had a name. Shui Yun. My name is Shui Yun. I awoke from a long dream the next morning. I had been brought back to my residence, dressed in clean clothes. The rain had ceased entirely, save for a few drops clinging to the eaves. I hurriedly rose and rushed outside, my long hair trailing behind me. I overslept. The officials are waiting for me to attend to affairs. Yet as I passed through the courtyard, I was called back. Xia Lin offered a faint smile. Lord Yun, might you accompany this idle man for breakfast? He sighed. I haven't spoken with you in days. Clear sunlight filtered through, like morning dew. The river channels had been repaired, the floodwaters receded, though puddles still lingered on the roads. Fortunately, it was only a natural disaster, not a man-made calamity. The people of Wuzhou were overjoyed. Coinciding with the governor's inventory of the treasury, a cache of fireworks was discovered, miraculously untouched by the floodwaters. He proclaimed they would be set off tonight for the entire city to enjoy. Xiaolin and I had both been weary for a long time, so this was a perfect opportunity to relax. Yet the night market bustled with activity, while Wuzhou's customs remained unpretentious. Walking together, Xiaolin and I were recognized by many vendors who insisted on presenting gifts, stuffing them into my arms. Before I could take 2 steps, my arms were already full. Watching my flustered state, Xiaolin's eyes sparkled with amusement. Until someone behind me called out urgently yet shyly, "Miss Yunyun." I turned to see the young clerk who'd been tending the soup kitchen for me these past days. Gathering his courage, he said, "You came to see the fireworks too? I know a spot with a great view." His words were cut short by Xiaolin's swift action. Xiaolin reached out, his hand resting naturally on my wrist through my sleeve. "Mind your step," he said. "There's puddles here." When I looked back, I saw only the young clerk's disappointed expression. The sky over Wuzhou was perfect for fireworks. I hadn't laughed so freely in a long time. After the display, I stood waiting for Xiaolin to return with sugar sculptures he'd bought for me. Porters carried lanterns, passers-by drifted by, and flickering lights danced around us. I didn't mean to turn, but there he stood beneath the lamp, the man in black robes, watching me for who knows how long. Finally, he waited for me to look back. One glance, and the world paled. Wei Sun removed his mask. A prince of his generation, his voice soft as if afraid to shatter the dream, he said, "Yun. It's time to go home." 16-year-old Shui Yun, before his cold indifference, before the scorn of Wei's nobility, before losing their first child while aiding flood victims in his name. So this was how she smiled back then. Clothed in coarse cloth, adorned with a simple hairpin, yet radiant and unburdened. Bitterness rose in Wei Sun's throat. This was his Yun. He did not dwell on why the arranged marriage from his past life had not occurred. Why his path to marriage had taken such twists and turns. Finding Yun was enough. Wei Sun spoke hoarsely, "You do not recognize me. I am Wei Sun, from the Wei capital. I was once betrothed to the Shui family of Jinling. I have come specifically for this matter." He had so much to say, yet could only choose the most mundane words. "Wei Ho, Wei Sun, wishes to marry Shui Yun." That was all. I shook my head. "I am not of the Shui family of Jinling. I come from Miaoxian, a humble household. You have the wrong person. The one you seek is Shui Yun of Jinling." My eyes suddenly brightened, and the Wei Marquis followed my gaze. A youth in white, ethereal as a fallen immortal, approached holding 2 strings of sugar figurines. I took a quick step forward, grasping Xiaolin's sleeve. Cold sweat drenched my back as I smiled and said, "Xiaolin, let's go home." Wei Sun stood frozen in place, his body numb with cold. He had prepared to elevate the woman he cherished to the highest rank of noble lady, willing to sacrifice everything to atone for his mistakes. But in this instant, he realized. The one thing he had overlooked from the very beginning, given a second chance, without the arranged marriage or coercion, would Yun still choose to marry him? After meeting Wei Sun, I was drenched in cold sweat. Yet I remained far calmer than I had expected. When I returned home, I slept soundly, not tossing and turning in fear like after encountering the Wei Marquis by the Dan River last time. Perhaps it was knowing that within Wuzhou City, Wei Sun couldn't take me away. Everyone here treated me kindly. And Xiaolin was here. Thirsty in the middle of the night, I rose to drink water. The night wind chimes tinkled from the eaves, and I pushed open the door. Moonlight filtered sparsely down the wooden corridor. I froze suddenly. Xiaolin was keeping watch outside my room. He sat with one leg bent, his outer robe piled beside him like snow. His eyes lowered as he wrapped white cloth around his wrist. A sword lay pressed beside him. At the slightest sound, Xiaolin would be here. My eyes grew warm. I walked slowly over and crouched before him. "Why aren't you sleeping?" Xiaolin replied, "The wind has risen tonight. I feared you might be afraid." Just a few simple words. Xiaolin had been wise since childhood, yet for some reason, he carried this fear. Only by staying here could he feel at ease. He handed me a document, and my eyes widened. It was a letter from Jinling, seeking to appoint a female official for the Wuyi region, one to oversee sericulture, farming, and education. It wasn't a position of high rank. But female official posts were exceedingly rare, and whenever one became vacant, talented women vied fiercely for it. All recipients of this letter were to depart immediately for Jinling to participate in the selection. Xiaolin said, the document should have arrived earlier. The prefect has reserved Wuzhou's candidate slot for you. He asked me to tell you, Miss Ayun, that he's grateful for your efforts during Wuzhou's flood. His tone was casual, yet the gesture carried profound weight. The position of court lady not only held real authority and rank but also granted autonomy in marriage matters. Even clan elders could not interfere. Xiaolin had always known my fear of the Shui family in Jinling. Relying on our shared family ties, they might force me into a substitute marriage. Had Xiaolin not recommended me to the governor, had he not maneuvered behind the scenes, how could the governor have conceived of such a way to repay me? I stared blankly at Xiaolin. So this was the meaning behind his initial promise, then you won't marry. Even if princes sought my hand, even if the clan elders forced me into marriage, I could refuse. I murmured softly, but what if I don't pass the selection for court lady? Xiaolin lowered his gaze, his voice steady, then there's still me. He had said it. He was here, always here. Returning to Jinling. The attitude of the crowd toward me was completely different. Even when I stayed at an inn, I received endless banquet invitations, something unheard of before. Only then did I learn the reason. On the day the Shui family married off their daughter, the Wei Marquis personally traveled 1,000 miles to escort the bride. It should have been a beautiful tale. Yet unexpectedly, Shui Yun, the Shui family maiden, fainted in terror at the sight of the ships. Beneath her crimson veil, her pale face was revealed, causing a public embarrassment. The Wei Marquis was furious and annulled the marriage on the spot. By the banks of the Dan River, he declared, such a timid and weak woman is unworthy to be the wife of a noble lord. Yet the Wei Marquis did not depart. He visited the Shui residence once more, this time to seek the hand of another Shui maiden, Shui Yun, known as the 17th Miss. Though our Jinling clan and mine had long ceased contact, our names remained linked in the family registry. During my time in Wuqing, the Shui family had been actively seeking me out. Everyone assumed my return was for the marriage to the Wei Marquis. They envied my good fortune and busied themselves extending banquet invitations, eager to curry favor with me. None could have imagined. I had returned to compete for the position of court lady. Few had secured the documents required to participate. Those who came were all noble daughters from the Wu and Yu regions, each renowned for her literary talent. On the day of the competition, Shui Yun was present. But her complexion was poor, and her figure noticeably gaunt. Other noble daughters passing by her offered only scornful smiles. Shui Yun had first been branded foolishly wicked by Xiaolin, then publicly disowned by the Wei Marquis for timidity. That she still came to compete for the palace-made position stemmed from one reason alone. It was simply because she was the most cherished daughter of the Shui family. Someone tripped her, sending her tumbling to the ground. A jeweled hairpin rolled from her hair, landing at my feet. It was a beautiful hairpin. I picked it up and returned it to her. Shui Yun lifted her eyes, calling my name for the first time, her gaze brimming with tears and resentment. Shui Yun, I simply refused to marry the Marquis of Wei. What wrong have I done? You came to Jinling seeking a favorable marriage alliance. This would benefit us both. What harm is there in substituting brides? Shui Yun and Shui Yun, such strikingly similar names. Even now, she still believed she was helping me. I fell silent for a moment. Before coming to Jinling, I asked my mother what kind of marriage could be considered a heavenly match. She said I would know when I saw it. At first, I believed what your Shui family said, that the Wei Marquis was a young, brilliant ruler, destined to be a worthy husband for a noble family. On the journey to take his place, I harbored hopes for him. Back then, I was as young as I am now, believing that hard work could bring happiness. It didn't matter that the Wei Marquis didn't like me, that the Wei capital despised my substitute marriage, that everyone thought my lowly status made me unworthy of him. I would excel at everything. But do you know how old I was when I died? Only 26. Her words were muddled and incoherent. Shuiyan stared at me wide-eyed, utterly confused. She couldn't possibly understand what I meant. I had already risen to my feet. The selection of court ladies was about to begin. What Shuiyan was like, what my past life was like, I no longer wished to be entangled in any of it. I took a few steps forward, but then heard a voice behind me. Shuiyan said, "I'm sorry." The examination for women was personally supervised by the esteemed lady of Nanyang County. By the time I finished my essay, noon had passed. The sun's rays grew sparse as I placed my brush upon the rest. The county lady happened to pass by my desk, pausing briefly, though not to examine my answer. I knew what she was observing. The noble ladies of high families bore only the faintest calluses on their fingertips, traces of practicing the zither. But my hands were thick with calluses, the result of my former life tilling the soil. I felt no shame in this, allowing the county princess to gaze down at them. One by one, the examination papers were collected. The young women around me were called in to take their tests. Finally, in the vast examination hall, I was the only one left seated before my desk. Outside the window, dusk was approaching. I was the last to take the examination. The title of Lady of Nanyang was not bestowed through paternal privilege, but earned through genuine merit. She personally handed me a stack of crimson and green official robes, adorned with a court lady's waist badge. I looked up blankly, unable even to speak. She smiled and said, "Do you know why I chose you?" The lady of the county continued, "On my journey to Jinling, I heard of the floods in Wuzhou and intended to help. Upon arriving, I found everything well organized. Passing a relief soup kitchen, I saw you leaning against a beam, exhausted and asleep. Everyone around called you Miss Yun. I wondered then what your real name might be. Today, a brilliant policy essay arrived, its insights rivaling any man's. The name on the scroll, Shui Yun. It's a splendid name." The identification token rested in my calloused palm. In the county princess's eyes, I saw only encouragement and hope for her junior. She said, "Your bearing is extraordinary, your temperament gentle and kind. I haven't seen someone like you in a long time. Ayun, I hope you will excel in your role as a court lady." I lifted my skirt and hurried out. I wanted to share this good news with Xiaolin as soon as possible. He must be waiting for me outside. From afar, I spotted a tall, upright figure. Panting, I ran toward him, my eyes sparkling with joy. "Xiaolin, I'm going to be an official." Yet, with just over 10 steps remaining, I abruptly stopped, my smile fading. The figure turned around. It wasn't Xiaolin. With the majestic bearing of a dragon and the grace of a phoenix, it could only be the Wei Marquis. Only a white bandage, stained crimson with blood, peeking from his right sleeve and wrapped tightly to his wrist, gave away the truth. He was wounded, yet his face betrayed nothing. Only his lips were pale. Wei Sun had always been this way, merciless to others, even more so to himself. Many knew of the Wei Marquis lingering in the south. Many sought his life. His days had not been easy. Wei Sun seemed oblivious to the name I'd spoken, lingering greedily upon my smile. He said, "Wei's capital has its own court ladies. Why did Ayun not come to Wei?" All in Jinling knew the tale. The Wei Marquis had visited, offering 3 city treasuries as betrothal gifts to seek the marriage of the 17th Miss of the Shui family, only to be unexpectedly rejected. I stood rooted to the spot, asking Wei Sun only one question: what of Xiaolin? A chill hung on Wei Sun's lips. That Xia family brat has his own destination. His attendant said, "Miss Ayun, do not be beguiled by that Xia fellow's handsome face. He is ruthless and cunning, secretly relaying your lordship's whereabouts to northern factions, drawing hordes of assassins. Every moment the Marquis spends in Jinling now is like dangling his life on the edge of a blade." In Wei Sun's heart, Xiaolin had committed many crimes. First, in a past life, he dared covet Ayun, though he met his end in the western regions. Second, in this life, he obstructed the heavenly ordained union between him and Ayun. He must be executed. Xiaolin did not leak the information, I murmured softly as the wind fell silent. The news was sent by my agents to Lord Chao of Yi City, Lord Su of Chongzhou, and Lord Wu of Songyang. I gave you enemies to send assassins after you. Your lordship, the one you should hate is me. Wei Sun whipped his head around, his gaze fixed on me without flinching. Since my rebirth, I'd feared Wei Ho would recognize me, striving to shed every habit from my past life as his wife. Yet that single word, Your Excellency, he'd heard countless times before. Only now did Wei Ho understand. Standing before him was Shui Yun, the woman who'd shared 10 years of his life, the woman who'd died for him. From head to toe, he felt as if buried in snow and ice, frozen stiff, unable to move an inch. He had thought heaven had granted him a second chance, redemption, a gift. He never imagined. It was atonement. He would never earn her forgiveness. The inn was brightly lit, even at night, a clear, cold light. Xia Lin had not yet returned. I brewed tea on the table, still the same calming blend. Xia Lin had always kept trusted men by my side. One of them told me, the young master is cunning to the point of being unnatural. The incident happened suddenly, leaving no time for final instructions. He only said to wait for him. So I waited for him. But first, I waited for the Marquis of Wei. I did not have anyone stop him. At this juncture, a prince of his stature dared only stand beyond the beaded curtain, not daring to step closer. In truth, this was for the best. For I, too, wished not to see him. Yet certain matters must find closure. Wind swept through the hall as the Marquis of Wei began his plea. When the Shui clan used you as a substitute bride, my fury knew no bounds. I felt deeply disrespected, and thus neglected you for years. Later, when I learned of your kindness, you no longer smiled at me as you did in the beginning. I, Wei Sun, became a prince and marquis, yet was rumored to have killed my father and brother. I felt abandoned by heaven. Yet how fortunate I was to have you as my wife in the beginning. Only I was young and reckless, failing to cherish you. Your capture by enemy forces in Yeqing is the greatest regret of my life. Having fought countless battles without defeat, I grew arrogant, convinced I could rush back to rescue you. Who could have foreseen that on the road to Yeqing, a mountain collapse blocked my path, delaying me by a single day? I arrived too late to save you. You worthless Wang clan scum. Take your life, I'll trade 3 cities for yours. Ayun, I cannot trade. For every city he takes, he slaughters its people. The lives of 3 entire cities, I was born to rule, destined to be a prince. I cannot trade. I had no choice, Shuayun. Each word was coughed up with blood. He turned his head away, trembling all over, tears streaming down his face. He had boasted of being a mighty ruler in chaotic times, his name destined for the history books. Yet after her death, Wei Sun looked back upon his realm. He owed no shame to the world, but only to Xue Shiquan. I whispered softly, Your Highness, do you know how I died? Before he could answer, I spoke calmly, though a tremor slipped into my final syllable, that scoundrel Wang hated you to the depths of his soul. He hated me, his wife, just as much. He ordered me to be buried alive. I refused to take the arsenic you sent me back then, clinging to hope until the very end. I only hid a bit under my fingernails. It wasn't until I was sealed in the coffin, suffocating beneath the earth, the agony unbearable, that I finally consumed the poison you gave me. Compared to being buried alive, arsenic proved a merciful release. What utter despair! I was merely a woman who wished to live well, yet in my final breath, I ended my own life. My voice cracked as I said, had I not been a substitute bride, I would have remained just as I am now, a most ordinary, joyful young maiden. I would have spared myself so much suffering. My lord, it was not only you who did not wish to marry me. Marrying you was never the path I desired either. The beaded curtain fluttered open, revealing only the dark crimson bloodstains spilling from the Wei Marquis's lips. Heart-wrenching. He said, I have wronged you. No compensation possible, no turning back. Without him, Shuiyin should have had a very, very good life. He betrayed that. Wei Sun, your crime is unforgivable. Night had long since deepened. As the 3rd pot of calming tea brewed, a fiery glow ignited on the horizon, piercing the darkness. I ascended the tower. From this lofty vantage, I could see the eastern waters of the city. Endless ships burned in succession, those were the vessels brought by the Wei Marquis. Wei Sun had many enemies. Trouble in Jinling was inevitable. I wasn't surprised. His life or death, his fortune or misfortune, truly none of my concern. But Xiaolin hadn't returned yet. Then came a voice calling, Ayun. I leaned over the railing and looked down, my eyes crinkling into a smile. Xiaolin stood below, gazing up, elegant as a pine tree. The night was still. Only a gentle breeze stirred. Xiaolin climbed the steps, approaching my spot. The corner palace lanterns cast a warm glow, softening his expression. Only then did I notice Xiaolin wasn't his usual neat self. He looked utterly disheveled, blood seeping through his white robes, even his hair showing scorched edges from fire. He knelt before me, carefully lifting a small kitten from his bosom, found it along the way. Not sure if you'll like it. Congratulations to our Yun, she's become a court lady. The kitten was a snowball of fluff, utterly adorable. I bent to lift his sleeve. The knife wound ran deep, exposing bone. The Marquis of Wei sent men to ambush me. I burned his ship. It happened so suddenly, I didn't get to tell you in person. Don't worry, just a superficial wound. Xiaolin lowered his gaze to meet mine, his quiet explanation washing away countless waves of peril. The Wei Marquis won't be able to come south for 5 years. No more pressure from the Wei Marquis. No more shackles from the Shui family. This is a life that truly belongs to me. It will be a very, very good life, so good it makes one want to cry. What more could I possibly want? I murmured softly, there's a rumor in Jinling, I wonder if you've heard it. They say I refused the Wei Marquis' marriage proposal because I'm in love with you. Xiaolin froze, his hand at his side suddenly clenching. The Shui and Xia families are distantly related. When I first met Xiaolin, I called him cousin to establish a connection, a claim that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Having walked alongside Xiaolin for so long, whispers of disapproval were not absent. Yet no one dared let them reach his ears. After a long silence, he said, rumors from the streets must not linger. I will personally handle them, lest they tarnish your reputation. I gazed into his eyes and whispered softly, what if? It isn't just a rumor? What if, Xiaolin, I truly cherish you? Wind, moon, and clouds all froze in that instant. Xiaolin suddenly reached out, and I fell into his embrace. Instantly enveloped by his scorching yet crisp breath. Forgetting the pain of my knife wound, casting aside past despair. It felt like I'd waited 2 lifetimes before hearing him say, his voice low and joyful, Xiaolin is blessed for 3 lifetimes. 3 lifetimes of fortune, my wish fulfilled. 1 lifetime of missing each other, 1 lifetime of reunion, and another lifetime to look forward to. The wind scattered all past and future, leaving only the moonlit path clear. My life still holds countless tomorrows to anticipate. The story ends here. Thank you for watching. The next chapter will be even more thrilling.